Hello everyone. My name is Ibrahim Hanbal. I am a teacher handling 3Is, and for this video, we'll be going over the Javelin Validation Board. The Javelin Validation Board is a tool to validate a business idea. The concept here is that you have a business idea, you have your customers, you have your solution, you have a problem that you want to address, and you have some assumptions, and you want to try and verify those. So you will have to um, bring those information to the customer or your clients and have them validate whether or not those are real problems, or will those be proper solutions. Are the assumptions that you have made correct, or should they be tweaked? So that is what this validation board is for. In this video, we'll be going over the parts of the validation board and how it's used. Now, before we continue, I would like to clarify something. The validation board is meant to be done in a community setting. So the idea here is that you will identify your customers, and then you will conduct data gathering in order to validate your uh, problem and your solutions. Now, due to the current situation that we are in, I will not be requiring you to do this. This video is simply to be used as a reference. I will show you how to use the validation board so that you can use it for your own future studies and future projects or research. So you will not be doing the validation board for your activity. Again, this is because in the original process of the validation board, you will have to conduct what we call out of the building experiments. As you can see here, you will have to go out and interview people, gather data, do surveys, focus group discussions, and so on. Since our situation does not permit that, this is more as a treat this more as a reference video. I'll just be showing you how this is done, and if you feel that or if you would like to create your own, let's say, startup or your own project in the future, this can be a good tool for that. Okay, with that in mind, let us proceed. The Javelin board, you have two sections of the Javelin board, the brainstorming portion and the experiment portion over here on the right hand side. So, on the left hand side is the brainstorm portion. This is where you put the information related to your startup or to your project. So, you'll see here that in the boxes there is different labels and different instructions, as well as some tips in order to help you come up with your outputs. Take note that there are many versions of the validation board. For this example, I'll be using this particular version or this template of the validation board. Here, our problem that we'll be tackling is improper garbage disposal. So this is our project, improper garbage disposal in Baguio City. Let us start with the first brainstorming portion. Who is your customer? Try to be as specific as possible. So in this case, we will write down our customers. So let's try to have, let's say, three. We have customers, in other words, are the people who are most affected by your problem or the problem that you're trying to address. Since we are trying to address garbage disposal issues, let us try to list down customers who are most likely affected by improper garbage disposal. The first one obviously is permanent residents. So obviously, permanent residents, people who are living here, will be the ones who will suffer the most, or not necessarily suffer, but they'll be affected the most by improper garbage disposal. Another group of customers are students. Obviously, students studying here, they might be affected by improperly disposed garbage in their area, in near their school, and whatnot. And another group of people are tourists. So tourists who are staying here, they may be affected in terms, not necessarily in terms of their health, but in terms of their perception. They may see the area that they're living in as very disorganized or whatnot if there is a lot of improperly disposed garbage. Now, what are the problems, or what is the problem that is being encountered? As it says here, phrase it from your customer's perspective. So let us try to list down the problems from the perspective or from the viewpoint of our customer. One problem that we can place is regarding knowledge. So knowledge of waste segregation is lacking. So this could be a possible issue or a possible problem. Many people are not aware of how to properly dispose or segregate their waste. They simply put all of their trash into one trash bag or garbage bag and call it a day. So that is one possible issue or one possible problem. Another one is waste segregation policies are not followed. So it could be that the residents, the tourists, the students know about waste segregation policies, but they choose not to follow them due to maybe laziness, maybe they don't really pay it any mind, they don't see it as a big problem or as a big consequence. Another possible problem is the knowledge. So in line with that, another possible problem could be that the knowledge of the impact of improper waste segregation is lacking. There we go. So this could be another problem. Why? It could be that many people do not really see or understand the effects of improper waste segregation. For example, certain electronic equipment or peripherals or materials are toxic if they're not disposed of properly. A simple example is printer ink. If it is not disposed of properly, the containers of printer ink, they could end up becoming toxic fumes. So that could become another issue or that could become an issue that will affect the health of the residents. So that is one area that could use some improvement. So these are now our problems. So we should start with three. I think this should be enough. Now, after listing down our problems, let us try listing down some of the possible solutions. So, what could be some solutions to address these problems? Let's start with the first one. Knowledge of waste segregation is lacking. What could be a way to address that? So, one um, one possible solution is a tool for identifying waste materials. So that could be one of our possible solutions. A tool such as an app. So let's specify that here. It can be, let's say, an app or a website maybe for identifying waste materials. So the idea here is that this tool will allow our users to check. Let's say they can point their camera at a piece of garbage and say, okay, this garbage is biodegradable, non-biodegradable, and so on. That could be one of our solutions. Another solution could be with regards to the second problem, waste segregation policies are not followed. We can try to enforce strict implementation of waste segregation policies. So that could be one solution. We will try to be a bit stricter with enforcing the rules. And with regards to the third option, knowledge of the impact of improper waste segregation is lacking. One possible solution is a knowledge base. A knowledge base on waste segregation and its impacts. So there, a knowledge base, again, something like an information portal, a website, an app, or a tool to help to give us information on the different waste segregation steps and the effects of improper waste segregation. Now, assumptions. Assumptions now are the uh, assumptions that you must make for your problem or for your solution to be true. So these are things that you will have to assume about your customer, about your clients. So let us try to list down a few assumptions regarding our customers. So let's start with The first one, so knowledge of waste segregation is lacking, and a tool will help the issue. So let's say one of our assumptions can be that customers, whether those are residents, students, or tourists, will use the tool or a tool to help manage wastes. So our assumption is that customers are willing to make use of a tool, an ICT tool, let's say, to help them manage waste. Another assumption, so looking at here, waste segregation policies are not followed, strict implementation. We try to align. So take note, what I'm doing here is I'm aligning. So the first problem will be connected with the first solution, which will be connected to the first assumption. So try to do that. Second problem is aligned to the second solution, which is aligned to the second assumption, and so on. So in this case, regarding the strict implementation, one assumption that we can make, our customers will participate in community drives for waste management. And then for our third assumption, we can say this. So easy access to information will encourage better waste management. There we go. So this is now our Javelin board, or at least our brainstorm portion. So as you can see, we have 3 customers, 3 problems, 3 solutions, and 3 assumptions. And if you have noticed, the problems, solutions, and assumptions are all aligned. The first problem is aligned with the first solution, which is aligned with the first assumption. So in other words, knowledge of waste segregation is lacking. What's the solution? A tool or app. And the assumption, customers will use the tool. So that's what, if you are creating your own validation board, try to align the different problems and solutions and assumptions together. Do not just place them willy-nilly. Now, let us do now the experiment portion. So on the second half of the Javelin board, it's supposed to be practice where you will go out and interview. But in our case, since we are not able to do that at the moment, and this is merely an example, we will just come up with some numbers or assumptions based on what will the response of our customers be. So, first things first, how do we do this? As you can see, customer problem solution. So the idea here is that you will list down your customers, one problem, one solution, and one assumption. So after that, you will try to verify or validate that. So how do we do that? Let's actually try that now. So first things first, let's write down our customers. So let's just say residents, students, and tourists. So this is our first set of customers, and so that we don't need to keep rewriting this, let's just copy this into the second, or into the succeeding boxes. Okay, that's our second set, and this is our third set. Great. Now, let us list down the problems. First problem, knowledge of waste segregation is lacking. So let's just shorten it. Knowledge is lacking. There we go. That is our first problem. And what's our first solution? A tool to identify waste. There we go. That's our first solution. What about our first assumption? Customers will use the tool. There. That is our first assumption. Now, what is the method and success criterion? This is a value that you will place along with your type of data gathering method. So for example, for this, we would like to conduct interviews. So we will place here interview, that is our method, and our success criterion is we want 6 out of 10 interviewees to agree. So what does this mean? this is what we'll place for this box. In other words, what this means is that we will the type of data gathering method will be interviews. So we'll interview people, and we will interview 10 people, and out of those 10 people, 6 of them must agree with these statements, these three here, in order for our experiment to be valid. So that's the idea there. So if we interview 10 people, for example, and 6 of them agree, then we can say, okay, our problem, our solution, and our assumption is correct. So we can now proceed to the next set. So let's say you conducted now the interview. You went out, assuming in this hypothetical scenario, you went out, you conducted the interview, and then you got now the results. So here you'll place now your results. So you will list down the total number of interviewees, and beside that you will list down the number of people uh, who agreed or who verified or validated your output. So in this case, assuming in our scenario, assuming 6 of them uh, agreed with our assumptions and problem and solution, we can say that, okay, our information now for the first experiment is now validated. So what we'll place here is, if you look at the module, it says either persevere or pilot. So persevere means that your assumption has been validated, and you can now proceed to checking the other assumptions. On the other hand, pilot means that your assumptions, your solutions, and whatnot are incorrect. Not necessarily that they're wrong, but they're not aligned with what your customers feel. So your customers may have a different problem or a different solution that would work best for them. So you will need to change it. You will need to modify your solution, modify your problem, or modify your assumption in order for your study to be valid. So in our case, since we met the criteria, we can type in persevere, because we got 6 out of 10 to agree with our statement. Okay. And finally, the learning. Learning is simply put what you learned in the study. What knowledge or information did you gain, or that you gained when you conducted this interview? So for example, you can say that let's say tech savvy customers uh, more likely to use tool. There, this could be a learning that you determined. Okay, most likely that your uh, out of those, let's say out of those 10, 6 of them are tech savvy, so they would be more likely to use the tool. That's why 6 of them agreed. While the other 4 maybe are not as tech savvy, or not as invested or interested in technology, so that's why they disagreed. So that could be what your learning is. So the learning again is simply put what you have learned, some information that you have gained when you conducted your interview, your insights, in other words. So, assuming that our first experiment is done, we validated the first set. Knowledge of waste is lacking, uh, tool to identify waste materials, and customers will use the tool. So, this could be, or this is now validated. We're good here. So in that case, since we validated the first set, let's go now to the second set, which is policies, implementation, and participation. So let's place that problem. Let's say the problem is waste segregation. So let's type in policies not followed. Not followed. There. That's our problem. Let's shorten that a bit. Our solution is strict implementation. Will that fit in our box? Nope, it's a bit too large. Strict enforcement. Is that short enough? Just barely. Okay, so strict enforcement of policies. There we go. So that is now our solution. And for our assumption, we'll take the second one. Customers will, we can just say participate to shorten it a bit. Participate. And same as before, we can just copy this and we'll say, all right, we want to conduct again another set of interviews, and we want to determine if this is legitimate or this is valid. So we'll conduct another round of interviews. This time, so take note, every time you do as another round of experiments, this will usually be another set of 10 people. So if you have 10 here, 10 here, 10 here, that means that you will have 30. If you have 10 for each until the fifth round, then you will have 50 different people to interview. So keep it in mind. Can this be less than 10? Yes. Can this be more than 10? Yes. For our example, we will use 10, but if you want to use 5, that's fine. If you want to use 15, that's fine. Okay? So let us now place our results. Now, let us say in this scenario, you interviewed the customers and you found that out of those 10 that you interviewed, only 4 out of 10 agreed. The other 6 disagreed. What does this mean? This means that your problem solution and assumption is not validated. So you will have to make a change. In other words, you will now have to pilot. You will have to try and change some of your assumptions, your solutions, or your problem in order to have them validated again. Because in this case, you did not meet your success criteria. You may be wondering, can I just change the success criteria? Well, yes, but it will lead to biased data. If this is 6 and this is 4, this may lead to your data being validated in on paper, but if you actually, let's say, implemented your project, your customers might not agree or might not um, align with what you assume because your data is biased. So as much as possible, if even if you have run into this roadblock where your interviews didn't agree with your implementation or your assumptions, that's fine. Yes, the whole point of this is to try again. Now, let's say during your learning you found that you should address the, let's say, here's the common let's say criticism of your interviewees. You should address the lack of uh, um, info instead of enforce. So just to shorten that, let's say the problem with the that the interviewees have is that they don't like the solution. They don't want it to be stricter enforcement. What if, let's say, the punishment does not fit the crime? No. So that's the comment, let's say, of your interviewees. That's why they did not agree. So you will have now to try and redo this with a different solution. So you will pilot. So we will take this same problem. We will copy that here. We will have, oops, we will have the same assumption, but we will come up now with a different solution. So let me just copy this. Okay, now what could be the solution? What could be an alternate solution? So let's say it says here address the lack of info. So what we can do as an alternate solution is um, um, provide a source of info, or create maybe create a source of info on waste management. Will that fit in the box? Yes, just barely. Now, so what did we do here? So the original problem was that the policies are not being followed. The riskiest assumption was that customers will participate in community drives. And the solution to the problem was we be stricter with the enforcement of policies. So maybe harsher punishments or more stringent rules, something like that. But the customers feel that that's not the best solution. They would rather address the lack of info instead of enforcing. So in that case, you can change your solution to you will create a sort of database or source of information for waste management. So maybe a website or a tool or a uh, uh, an app that will inform the user of, let's say, how to properly manage waste, what are the rules on waste management, what are the policies on waste management in your LGU, and even the collection time. So that sort of thing, that could be now your solution. Instead of trying to be harsher with the policy, you can simply create a information tool, and that will align with with your assumption. Customers will participate in community drives for waste management since they are aware. So let's say your app or your source of info can tell the user, okay, there's a community drive, there's a program for recycling, there's a program for managing your waste, etc. So that could be now your new solution. So, after doing this, after brainstorming again and changing your solution, you will go now and interview people again. So, another set of 10 people, success criteria is 6. And let's say this time you succeeded. You now got an 8 out of 10 people who agree uh, with your assumptions. So, you can now pat yourself on the back because you have now validated your solution. So, you can now persevere. So in this case, you will now persevere with these assumptions. So that's the idea here. That is the point of the Javelin board. You will do an iterative process. You will keep interviewing people. You will keep checking your problems and assumptions and solutions until you come a time where you will all of them have been validated and all of them are aligning with uh, the needs and wants of your customers. So let's say the learning here is that um, access to info will encourage participation. Let's actually fix the alignment for that. There. So let's say this is our learning now. Based on your interviews, the residents said that access to info will encourage participation. So they will more likely participate in community drives for waste management if they have a source of info. So now, since you have succeeded with persevering, or you were able to reach persevere, you can now proceed to experiment 4, where you will check the third problem, third solution, and third assumption. So that's the idea of the Javelin board. You are doing an iterative process. So you notice here that we initially started with this set of information, this set of problems, but as we moved along, so let's just get that. So you notice that we had these three as our problems, these three as our solutions, and these three as our assumptions. But you notice that here here we made a change to the solution because this one was not valid. So that will be removed here. So we'll replace that now with the create a source of info. So that's the idea of the validation board. You are going to validate your initial information here in order to make it better, in order to make it align with what your customers need. Okay? Again, I want to reiterate this, what I mentioned in the beginning. You are not going to do this for your group now. This is simply a reference. Your activity will be different for module 9. This is simply to show you how the Javelin validation board can be used in order to check a project, a business idea, or a research. So that is one tool that you can use in order to help you check if your problem that you're trying to address is actually okay. All right. So hopefully this was informative for you guys. As always, thank you again for watching and have a good day.